Tonight's dinner included beef tacos and pasta, a refreshing change from our usual meals. Don't you think? It feels like frozen dinners have become a staple in our home lately, and I can't shake the feeling that it's somewhat unfair, especially after a tiring day. But I realize how challenging things are for you with your due date coming up. You're right. I haven't been very helpful around here. Juggling everything has been tough lately, particularly as your pregnancy progresses. We've leaned on quicker meal options more than I'd like to admit. I genuinely wish I could do more, not only with cooking but also with household chores. I was trying to ease any pressure, so I switched topics and asked if you could grab the mail for me. I didn't intend to make you feel worse about the meal situation. As I approached the door, I heard a sudden click. It had been locked from inside. Confused and a bit panicked, I found myself locked out without my phone in the chilly weather. Just when anxiety started to set in, a kind stranger appeared and offered his help after hearing my predicament. Reflecting on our life together, I cherish the happiness we've shared. We've been married for 2 years, navigating life on a modest budget but content in our simple lifestyle. Our joy multiplied when we welcomed our baby last month. Bringing home deli food tonight was a small gesture of affection, especially considering how challenging morning sickness has been for me, more difficult than we anticipated. Pregnancy has been an intense journey filled with new experiences, far more demanding than I ever heard from others. Even the simplest tasks can feel overwhelming. Yet your unwavering support has made me feel fortunate compared to some of the stories I've heard. Your understanding and help have been my anchor during this unique phase of our lives, reminding me of the bond we share and our resilience as a couple. Tomorrow is a significant occasion, my in-laws' 27th wedding anniversary. They've planned a celebration at their home, but I find myself in a bit of a bind. The thought of enduring a 5-hour drive is daunting right now. My body has been through so much recently, and I gently expressed my wish to possibly skip this one. My husband pointed out that I've consistently attended family gatherings in the past and suggested that this celebration should be no different. I've always held his parents in high esteem. They have been incredibly supportive and kind to us, celebrating our pregnancy and helping with our wedding expenses. Their generosity is boundless. However, the severity of my morning sickness makes the idea of participating in their 50th anniversary celebration seem nearly impossible. While my husband understands my discomfort, the physical experience of morning sickness is something he can't fully grasp. He seems determined for me to attend, perhaps not realizing how taxing it is for me. Proposing a visit on another occasion seemed like a reasonable compromise, and I hoped his mother would understand the situation. However, the expectation to go, especially since my husband had already assured them we'd be there, left me feeling trapped. He even suggested I downplay my illness, which, while I comprehend his perspective, felt a bit inconsiderate given my current struggle. The thought of the lengthy drive, along with the stress it might cause, was not ideal for my pregnancy. Still, wanting to avoid further conflict, I agreed to go, armed with medication to help with the nausea. The morning of the trip was as challenging as I anticipated, but the medication provided some relief. I steeled myself for the day ahead, hoping I could make it through for the sake of family unity. As we got closer to their home, worsening road conditions didn't help my nausea. The extended travel time due to weekend traffic only added to my discomfort. Once we arrived, I did my best to collect myself before facing everyone. To my surprise, my mother-in-law immediately acknowledged my situation. She reassured me that it would have been perfectly acceptable for my husband to come alone, considering my health. Her empathy and understanding, likely stemming from her own experiences, made me question whether my presence was even necessary. In that moment, I felt a mix of relief and slight irritation, wishing this understanding had been expressed sooner. Nevertheless, her concern and warm welcome eased the discomfort of the journey, reminding me of the significance of family and the unspoken compassion that often exists among us. Since I had already made the journey, expressing my grievances to my husband at that point seemed pointless. After all, the day was meant to celebrate his parents' 50th anniversary, not to highlight my discomfort. Despite my efforts to remain in the background, maintaining my composure throughout the day became physically and mentally exhausting. By the evening, I felt utterly drained, yet I refrained from resting in the car to avoid appearing inattentive to my husband, who was driving. His comment about my seeming disinterest hit hard. I hadn't meant to come off as indifferent, fatigue had simply taken its toll. My mother-in-law's thoughtful acknowledgement of our late departure only emphasized my desire for more empathy from my husband regarding my condition. Navigating the day with morning sickness while keeping quiet, I had hoped for at least a simple check-in about how I was doing during our drive home, a gesture that would have meant a lot. Instead, my efforts seemed unnoticed, my feelings unrecognized. Bringing up any issue felt like it would only heighten tensions, especially when the focus seemed solely on how I appeared to others rather than my well-being. Following what felt like a lecture from him, a heavy silence fell over our journey back. The tension was thick, making the hours feel even longer. We arrived home after 9 p.m. Both undoubtedly exhausted from the day's events. I sank onto the couch, struggling to keep my eyes open. Just as I considered mustering the energy to change into pajamas, my husband commented on the lack of beer in the fridge, hinting it was up to me to replenish it. His request for me to go out and buy some at this late hour, after a day filled with nausea and exhaustion, felt downright heartless. This behavior starkly contrasted with the kindness and thoughtfulness he had shown early in our marriage. His demands and the events of the day left me feeling not only physically worn out but also emotionally abandoned, making me reflect on the change in his attentiveness and care for me. I never thought we would find ourselves in such a situation. He had been in a foul mood during our drive, and I sensed that any refusal from me would only intensify his annoyance. But honestly, I was at my limit. The thought of trudging to the convenience store for beer at such an hour after a day marked by morning sickness felt ridiculous. Even after I repeatedly expressed my fatigue and the toll the day had taken, he brushed my concerns aside, insisting he needed his beer before finishing his bath or else he'd be furious. The stern look he shot my way, filled with expectation, left no room for discussion. Once he disappeared into the bathroom, a wave of frustration washed over me, prompting me to let out my feelings on the couch. Resigned to the fact that this would be my last task of the night, I dashed to the store, hoping to avoid any further conflict. Upon returning, I put the beers in the fridge and made my way to bed just before he finished his bath. The exhaustion was so overwhelming that I fell asleep immediately, almost collapsing from sheer fatigue. Surprisingly, I felt a sense of pride in my ability to push through the day's demands. The next morning, while he slept in, I woke up feeling slightly better than the previous day, though morning sickness still lingered. Seizing a moment of relative wellness, I tackled most of the household chores, reflecting on how much heavier each task felt as my pregnancy progressed. The supportive partner I once knew seemed to have faded away, replaced by someone who appeared more critical than caring. Despite my efforts to keep up with everything and avoid his complaints, the emotional and physical toll was undeniable. Now, as I enter the final month of my pregnancy, the anticipation of meeting our baby brings a flicker of hope and excitement, providing a reprieve from the challenges I've faced. This journey has been anything but easy, yet the thought of soon holding our child fills me with purpose and joy, overshadowing the difficult days behind me. When he finally returned home, the conversation shifted to mundane dinner plans, suggesting beef tacos and pasta. I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy amid everything, focusing on the future and the impending arrival of our baby, a beacon of hope amid the trials. Recently, I had resorted to serving frozen meals from Costco, only to be met with disappointment. Balancing pregnancy and household chores has stretched my capabilities, leaving me little time for cooking from scratch. I've silently wished for my husband to help with the chores so I could save some energy for preparing fresher meals. His frustration over the limited cooking I managed only added to my stress. It's disheartening to see him, soon to be a father, show little willingness to share household responsibilities, prompting me to question our future dynamics. Driven to my limits, I finally spoke up, expressing how impractical it was to manage everything on my own and how unfair his expectations felt, especially with my due date approaching. His favorite pastimes, like drinking and golf, mean he's rarely home to lend a hand. My appeal was for understanding and support, not confrontation. Surprisingly, instead of the expected backlash, he disengaged, burying himself in his phone, a reaction that puzzled me but also relieved me that an argument was averted. That evening, dinner was once again a reheated affair, consumed late due to his delay. After dinner, well into the night, he asked me to check the mailbox, an odd, seemingly trivial task that I accepted, hoping to sidestep any conflict. When I reached the mailbox, However, I found it empty. A realization made all the more chilling by the winter's cold and my inadequate attire. When I tried to re-enter our home, I discovered the door inexplicably locked from the inside. My calls for entry went unanswered, causing me to fear the worst, that this was some sort of punishment for earlier tensions, or perhaps a misguided gesture taken too far. Stranded in the freezing night, dressed only in pajamas, I faced a dire situation. The relentless cold mirrored the chill in our strained relationship. Locked out and alone, I confronted the harsh reality of our communication breakdown, questioning the sustainability of our marriage under these conditions. Intending only a quick trip to the mailbox, I was woefully unprepared for the bitter cold. Dressed far too lightly for the frigid temperatures, the biting chill had my face and hands stinging, my body shaking uncontrollably as I fought to stay warm. Panic began to settle in as my thoughts became muddled. I repeatedly rang the doorbell and called out, hoping for my husband to answer. Yet, there was nothing. His silence left me wondering if this was a harsh retaliation for the convenience meals I had been relying on. As time stretched painfully on without any sign of him, my energy dwindled, and the cold began to seep deeper into my bones. It was in this moment of despair that I heard footsteps approaching. To my surprise, it was a bartender from a nearby establishment, someone I hadn't encountered before. Thanks to his late hours, his timely arrival felt almost serendipitous as he offered me his coat, a small act of kindness from a stranger that sparked a glimmer of hope. Despite the unusual circumstances, I found myself sharing my ordeal with him, driven by a mix of desperation and the need for human connection. Gratefully accepting his offer to use his phone, I reached out to my in-laws to arrange a place to stay for the night. The warmth of the hotel room was a stark contrast to the cold I had endured, and I quickly fell into a deep, exhausted sleep. The next morning brought a bewildering scene at my home. My in-laws were waiting for me as a result of my late-night call, but nothing could have prepared me for the sight of my husband outside, underdressed for the still chilly morning air, receiving disapproving looks from his parents. It was a shocking twist. I hadn't anticipated the expressions on their faces, nor the fact that my in-laws would react so swiftly to the news of my plight. It turned out they had intervened after the bartender, whose phone I had borrowed to reach out for help, shared my situation with them. The irony of it all struck me. The very effort intended to hold my husband accountable for his thoughtlessness had backfired, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. This unexpected intervention from my in-laws highlighted just how serious things had become and their readiness to step in on my behalf. It was a clear reminder of the support network I had, albeit one that often operated in surprising ways. While the experience was distressing, it revealed the lengths my family was willing to go to rectify the injustices within our home. After the freezing episode that forced me to seek shelter outside, I confided in my mother-in-law about that night and voiced suspicions that had been gnawing at me. These doubts were not entirely my own but had been seeded by the bartender, who had become an unlikely ally. He had mentioned spotting my husband in town with a younger woman, a revelation that resonated with me. Considering my husband's late-night outings, taking this seriously, I shared my concerns with my mother-in-law, who wasted no time. Armed with a spare key, she and my father-in-law confronted my husband the following morning, and their examination of his phone confirmed my worst fears, evidence of an affair. The revelation shattered any lingering compassion I had for him, especially in light of his prior actions that had left me outside in the cold. The irony of seeing him shivering in the chilly air didn't escape me. His betrayal, validated by my in-laws, transformed any pity I felt into steely determination. Until that moment, I had never suspected him of infidelity. Our marriage, once filled with trust and shared experiences, now felt like a distant memory, particularly as I faced my pregnancy mostly alone. When I confronted him, I couldn't help but sarcastically remark about him seeking warmth from his mistress, observing his evident distress. However long his discomfort lasted, it paled in comparison to the betrayal I experienced. As he struggled to respond, likely frozen in both body and mind, I firmly stated my intention to divorce him. His reaction to my declaration, still shivering in the cold, revealed his fear. Whether it was about the divorce itself or the financial ramifications didn't matter. At that moment, any concern for his feelings dissipated, replaced by my resolve to protect myself and our unborn child. I made it clear that I not only planned to divorce him but also intended to pursue legal action for emotional distress. unmoved by his pleas for conversation. My father-in-law's stern demeanor left my husband with no escape, emphasizing the weight of his actions and their repercussions. His longing to return to the warmth of our home was overshadowed by the impending reality of what awaited him. Although this moment was steeped in disappointment and betrayal, it marked a pivotal change for me as I prepared to move on from the pain his selfishness had caused. Supported by my in-laws, determined to start anew, I returned to my parents' home, leaving my estranged husband in the care of his parents. Witnessing his frail condition did little to evoke sympathy within me. Given his previous actions, my parents welcomed me back with open arms, offering their support and a safe environment to raise my child, for which I was profoundly grateful. I focused solely on preparing for the arrival of my baby, asking my in-laws to hold off on any discussions regarding my husband until after the birth. 4 weeks after settling in with my parents, I welcomed a healthy baby boy into the world. His cries as he entered this life brought tears to my eyes and marked the beginning of my journey into motherhood. Over the next 5 months, I devoted myself to caring for my son, gradually adapting to our new life together. Eventually, I invited my in-laws to meet their grandson, under the condition that my husband would not accompany them. Their joy in holding him was palpable, yet tinged with sorrow for what should have been a more celebratory family occasion. During their visit, we also addressed the pressing matters of alimony and child support. With their assistance, the entirety of my husband's affair was thoroughly examined, resulting in a legal resolution. He arranged a lump sum alimony payment via a loan but struggled to meet his substantial child support obligations. Remarkably, my in-laws stepped in to ensure their grandson's financial security, agreeing to a monthly repayment plan with my husband. The aftermath of these events left my husband in a precarious financial situation, dedicating a large portion of his earnings to repaying his parents, leaving him with barely enough to support himself. The fallout from his infidelity also led to the end of his relationship with the other woman, isolating him further. Despite the harsh reality he faced, it felt like poetic justice for his actions. Now, residing with my parents, I embraced the challenges and joys of single motherhood. The support from my family has been invaluable, making this transition easier and more rewarding. Looking ahead, I plan to return to the workforce once my son starts elementary school. I intend to maintain a relationship with my in-laws, scheduling regular visits to preserve the family connection for my son's benefit. Although my husband's choices led to his own downfall, they inadvertently opened the door for a fresh start for me and my child. With this new beginning on the horizon, I am determined to cultivate a joyful and fulfilling life, cherishing every moment with my son and relying on the strength and support of my loved ones. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Stay inspired.